We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for braving this weather. I was wondering about whether I wanted to brave it myself. Louisville was pretty bad this morning, but fortunately Boulder's not too bad. Anyway, our series for this year, for 2024, is to stay or not to stay. Our whole emphasis in the 2024 year for the Boulder Parkinson Support Planning Committee has been focused, or is going to focus on your living situation and all the decisions that people make, all of us as we get older, for sure, and most definitely when you have a progressive illness that you can't necessarily predict. Lots of changes may be in your future. And so we wanted to try to address that. So my first presentation of the year is, it's about staying in your own home. In fact, I was thinking about it. My husband said, you should call it There's No Place Like Home. Because I was a home care therapist for 25 years. And my job there was to help people to figure out how to stay in their own homes, how to adapt themselves and their surroundings to whatever it was that they were dealing with, whether it was a temporary thing like an injury or recovering from a surgery where they suddenly have precautions to follow, or whether it was a chronic medical condition or a progressive one. It didn't matter. But about 16 years ago, I don't know, for different reasons, I decided to focus on Parkinson's. And in that time, since then, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people with Parkinson's. And that would go from day one of diagnosis all the way through all the different stages. And so I feel like one of the things that I try to do when I look at somebody's home is to help them predict what might be coming for them so that we can start to head things off at the pass, address them before they occur. There are a lot of times we say, well, everybody with Parkinson's is unique, and I agree with that 100%. But there are a lot of common scenarios and symptoms. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a UPDRS. You know, it stages things and tells you sort of what you might be able to expect. And so that, along with just watching people go through this whole process, has made me aware of some of the things that I want to help people to not have to deal with if it's possible. So my whole function, or my whole purpose, is to help people stay safe and be able to function as independently as possible throughout their course. So today, what we're going to focus on is how to create a living environment wherever you are that's adapted to the specific needs of a person with Parkinson's. So here's how it's going to go. First, I'm going to list the reasons why people might consider moving or making a change to their homes. Then I'm going to identify some specific symptoms of Parkinson's that might affect safety and independence. I'm going to focus in particular on fall prevention, and I think you all have a handout that is going to have a lot of the stuff sort of summarized. It's an old one that I did years ago for a fall prevention week, but it has a lot of, I think, pretty practical tips that you might find useful. And then we're going to take a tour through a house and just discuss the different areas of the home that you might want to consider modifying. So hopefully by the time we're done, you'll have some ideas of things to talk about with your family or your care partners before you make those major decisions, whether it's to move or to modify your home or to purchase a big piece of equipment, whatever it is. I'd like to just offer some suggestions that you might want to talk about and consider. Many of these ideas that we're going to talk about are actually pretty universal. We're all getting older. So there are things that hopefully will help all of us as we find that those changes that come with aging are starting to affect us, and we need to be more cautious in certain situations or more thoughtful about different things in our environment. But what I would say is, regardless, you want to start now. Right now, we have the most up here, the most brain cells, all of us, I'm talking about, to use to adapt to our situations. And so it's a lot easier to make those changes the more you have to work with up here. It's easier to develop new habits. I was just in New Zealand for about a month, and I had to drive on the other side of the road and figure out all the, the turn signals on one side, the opposite side, and the windshield wipers and all that. And it took a lot of thinking to try to just keep in mind every time I come around, go to the left side and use the blinker that's on this side, I think. Anyway, I came home and I'm still doing it like I'm in New Zealand, and I'm flipping on the windshield wipers and getting all mixed up. And anyway, what I'm trying to say is it's hard to develop a new habit, but you can, and they can stick with you. So start now. The other thing is that it's a whole lot easier to prevent an accident than it is to treat an injury. So, enough said. Why do people with Parkinson's consider leaving their homes? I'm going to list a few things. Fear of falling. Parts of the home feel inaccessible or unsafe. People don't want to live alone. Maybe they've lost a spouse and they don't want to be by themselves. Incontinence. A lot of people don't think about that one, but it's a major reason why people end up in facilities where they have care providers. Your current home or your property just feels like too much to take care of. Or you might be thinking, well, I'm needing more personal care just to live my life than I think my partner or my family or whoever in my life can help me with. I'm going to need some extra care. So with that, I want to jump into that next one, which is fear of falling or fall prevention. The reason I think this one's so important is because for all of us over the age of 60, we can expect that 1 of 5 will fall each year. People with Parkinson's are twice as likely to fall as their non-Parkinson's peers. And after one fall occurs, and these are all just statistics you can find, there's a 50% increase in the likelihood of a second fall. And that makes sense to me because one of the things that happens when you fall is you're afraid of the next fall happening. And so people begin to assume a really cautious, protective kind of stance or movements. So they might, pop this up. They might start to kind of look down at the floor. They might take really cautious steps. And so like even right here, if I'm just shuffling my feet along, I can trip over something quite small. And because my feet are really close together and I'm being really cautious, if I do, lose my balance, it's like I'm Simone Biles on a balance beam, and I am not Simone Biles, so I'm going to fall over because my base of support is so narrow. If I had it wide, I could withstand an impact of some kind. So, let's see, back in. The other thing about falls is that they are a leading cause of decline and even death in people with Parkinson's. So So right here, I guess I want to put in a plug for exercise. It does really matter. Yes. All here, raise your hand if you believe exercise is important. Yes, I'm preaching to the choir. Okay, so let's talk about some of the most common reasons why people do fall. And this is where you've got that sheet there. So you don't have to take any notes. You don't have to write anything down. It's pretty much summarized. A lot of the things I say today will be in that. But here are the ones that I listed for all of us, anyone, Parkinson's or not. Slips, trips, misses, loss of balance, and things you just shouldn't do. Slips, that's where your foot slips out from under you. Trips, that's what I just demonstrated, where your foot catches and stops when you're in the middle of moving. Misses, that's where you don't see something coming. And you might step like on a stairwell where there's not lighting on the bottom. I've done this at my house when I moved into a new house. There wasn't lighting on the bottom 2 steps, and I simply didn't see it and just thought I was done. But I wasn't done. Took me 2 tries to learn that. But yeah, anyway, once wasn't enough. I had to do it twice. Loss of balance, and we can talk about different reasons for that with Parkinson's, but a lot of people as they age have loss of balance as they get a little more stiff or slow in their movements, or just don't move that much. They're not as agile as they used to be. There's all kinds of reasons and things you just shouldn't do. Oh, let's see, how many things can I think of? My dad trying to climb up on a ladder, or actually climbing up into a tree. We'll do that one. Climbing up into a tree with a chainsaw. Not a good idea. But at home, it could be my mom climbing up on a ladder. She had terrible balance, terrible posture, and then reaching up to get something with both hands. So nothing holding on to anything, tilted back, and just a fall waiting to happen. So now Parkinson's takes those risk factors and magnifies them because of a few of the symptoms that are common. I would say the highest risk factor by far is freezing of gait. So when those feet stop moving unexpectedly, that's a real problem. And I think you all know what freezing of gait is, so I don't think I'll go into that. But what makes it worse are distractions, anxiety, startling somebody. People with Parkinson's do tend to startle more easily at times. This is kind of something later, but I have noticed that. Having to make quick decisions. I don't know about you, but I'm terrible at crossing streams. And I've fallen into a few of them. And so when I get to the stream crossing and I have to quickly decide, where am I going to put my feet, which rock, I just freeze. And it's the closest thing I can think of to what a freeze might feel like. My feet just stop moving. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. And so that's why we practice that a lot in class, actually. Trying to make those quick decisions, just do it, just go. Think about it, make a decision, go. Turning is another one that causes freezing of gait. And what we see with that is that the head turns, but the feet stay stuck. And so it looks like this. And you kind of get all off balance with that. And then any changes in the pathway. So maybe it's an obstacle, maybe it's a narrow doorway, maybe it's a change in the flooring. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then moving along, visual changes that can happen with Parkinson's, double or blurred vision. Those get worse with fatigue. The need for increased contrast. So say you have a set of steps like over here, depending on the lighting, sometimes you can't tell where one step ends and the other one begins. And so you can miss it. And we can talk about that. Visual spatial deficits. Sometimes, especially on the most affected side, a person doesn't sense quite accurately how far away they are from the obstacle on that side. Say it's a doorway or walking through a narrow place, maybe like with chairs. And then I think there's this other thing, I like to call it a periscope kind of a situation where it's like if you have the poor posture that comes sometimes with Parkinson's, that bent over thing, and you're fearful, so you're looking down, it's like you're looking through a periscope. You're just looking at what's right in front of your feet. And so as you're going along, something can appear suddenly, but you don't have time to react to it. So that can be really, really dangerous. And then, of course, there's the eyes are a muscle, so is the neck and the trunk, and they all get stiff. So you might be not really looking at your entire environment and kind of seeing things that are coming as well as you might think or might need to. So we talked a little bit about postural instability already. That's just decreased balance. It's just a fancy term for that. And it's caused by that stiffness, the stoop posture. When you stoop, your center of gravity changes. So when you're up tall, it's one place. When you're stooped forward, it kind of propels you forward a bit. Timing, that would be that thing where when you want to turn, typically what happens is you turn your head, your eyes, then your neck, then your shoulders, and then your hips, and then your foot. But with Parkinson's, because the foot tends to lag behind, I always tell people, let's do the foot first. Everything else will catch up. But if you start to do all this and that foot's not moving, that's a fall. The other thing is, where are the feet? Often you see that narrow base of support that people don't even realize that their feet have kind of closed in, because what happens is sort of a protective positioning of the feet. And again, we're not Simone Biles, so we are not good at standing in with our feet together and then trying to balance ourselves if something happens, or if we're trying to, say, reach for something. We do a lot of this in class. If you're trying to reach for something, the first thing you need to do is get those feet wide. But also, as you're walking in an unpredictable situation, it's better, like say if you're going backwards, it's better to go backwards with wide feet. So anyway, I'm kind of going on about some of this, but I think it's just really important stuff to understand why the environment can help. So we talked about shuffling gait. Another one I wanted to mention is just dizziness that can come from, it's called orthostatic hypotension, where the blood pressure drops as you change positions from lying down to sitting to standing. The blood pressure isn't keeping up with the change of position, so you feel dizziness. And it can be especially dangerous, like if you have a lot of stairs. It can be dangerous anywhere, but stairs are really dangerous with this. And then there's cognitive issues. The one that I want to mention is memory, type of memory called prospective memory. So I might ask a person, okay, what are the steps to sit down in a chair? Well, I bow down, I reach back, and I sit. Okay, great. You know what to do. But you have to remember those steps. And that's where it gets a little tricky, because some people can tell you, oh yeah, I always use the rail. I know I'm supposed to use the rail. But do you always remember to use the rail? And that's where it gets a little tricky. Part of that is due to, I think, sensory problems that, you know, a person might feel like, in class this happens a lot, where I'll say, okay, let's get really big, tall, big, stretched out, and I might see this. And it's not that that person is not doing what I want them to do. They're doing exactly what I want them to do. They just don't know that what they're doing isn't already this. It feels like this, but it's this. So that sensory awareness can really affect how a person moves in their environment. And then we talked about that quick decision making, but also multitasking. Everything for Parkinson's is multitask. When you're walking, you're thinking a lot more about your feet than you used to have to do. And so as you walk, if you start looking around, that's a multitask. I'm turning my head, I'm changing my balance. If I have somebody asking me a question, we're trying to have a conversation, I'm trying to think about what I'm going to say or listening to what they're saying, and I forget about my feet. So if my feet are not doing what they're supposed to do automatically, all of a sudden I'm at risk. All right, and then fatigue and anxiety, they just make everything worse. I'll just say that about them. Okay, so let's throw some spaghetti at the wall and just take some different parts of the house. And I'm going to tell you what I might be looking for when I walk into somebody's house. And we'll kind of take it from there. And just know that the changes that people can make in their environment are not always giant changes. Sometimes they're the smallest things. It might be a piece of tape on the floor. It might be moving something 6 inches into a different location to just give a little bit more room. It doesn't have to be big, but sometimes it is big. So we'll just kind of go through this and see what you think. Let's start at the beginning. How do you get into your house? Where do you have to park to get into your house? That's sometimes a reason why people move to a facility like this. The parking's underground. You could take an elevator up. It's cool, unless there's a flood and the whole thing floods, which I guess did happen, but not typical. Anyway, let's go to the steps. So most homes have steps leading up. Are they in good condition? I know the steps in my neighborhood, it's about 20, I think my neighborhood's about 20 years old maybe. And a lot of the steps where there was more than one are wooden. And so many of them have had to be replaced because they start to crack and they start to shift and they start to, have all these problems with them where they're deteriorating because they're just, old wooden steps. But what are the ADA requirements? That's Americans with Disabilities Act. And you can look these up. I mean, they're online if you want to see, and these are general. But what they would recommend is to have a minimum maximum height. The minimum would be 4 to 7 inches, basically, for the riser, the height. And then you want a decent size tread. That's the part you put your foot on. And that needs to be about 11 inches, which would hold most of their foot. In Louisville, when I was doing home care, some of these old houses that miners used to live in, they would have these basements and the steps would be about 10 inches deep. That's really deep. And not all the same. They weren't even uniform. Usually made out of, usually there was a concrete bottom that you could hit at the bottom if you missed one. And they were really narrow treads. So you could pretty much only fit about the ball of your foot and your toes on. So it's like going up and down the stairs on your toes, really. But anyway, so, I mean, if you have a wheeled walker or a wheelchair that you're trying to maneuver up the stairs, that's a whole different project. You are going to need platform steps or a ramp for those. And there are different requirements, ADA specifications for those. But in general, what I found, I just saw a really cool house recently, and it was all ADA, everything. And they had put a platform step in the garage. So I'm a big advocate of having your stairs, your ramps, whatever it is at your entrance covered and protected from the weather. Because look out there now. It's not always easy to navigate stairs or ramps when the weather's bad. So you want to protect it so you can, you've got enough to think about. That's all I'll say. Anyway, platforms can be really helpful if it's just one step down at a time. You can even bump a wheelchair down on that if you know how to do it. And again, I would say have somebody teach you how to do that, because there are ways to do it and there are ways not to do it. But I really liked in this ADA home, going back to that, they had a totally flat platform entrance right into the house. There was no transition piece, which can really kind of trip you or make a wheeled entrance a little bit rockier. I really like having some place to sit when you first get in the house, or right on the outside of the entrance. And that gives you a place to take muddy or wet shoes off, or jackets, if it's been raining, things like that. It's really nice to have some hooks or some places to put things. So if you're bringing packages in, can you just bring them in one at a time, put it on something here on the outside, get in through the door, and then pick it up and take it in, or maybe have a wheeled cart and just roll it right in, things like that. But just be thinking about, okay, how do I get into this door? Speaking of doors, they're usually pretty wide, the entrance doors, but most doors have a spring on them, and it requires so much effort to get it open, and then it's going to close by itself. How fast does it close? Does it clip your foot on the way out or hit you in the butt when you're trying to, navigate through? So those are just some things to kind of be thinking about. And that's where having a nice smooth transition, I love that, because don't you have enough to think about already with getting through the door and trying to, maneuver and do whatever. And then you've got this little lump. They're especially bad on sliding doors, because they tend to be a couple inches high and they can be really difficult to get over. They do make transition pieces. So all this stuff that I'm telling you about, there are so many ways to modify. I used to tell my folks, there's at least 25 ways to solve any one problem that we find in your home. And just to let you know, I would work in homes that were the whole gamut, from just abhorrent situations where, so crowded you couldn't even hardly access the bathroom because your body wouldn't fit in, or big holes in the floor that went all the way through, and power wheelchairs trying to get around that, to mansions where they could afford to do anything they wanted to do. So what I'm saying is, you work with what you've got, and we try to modify whatever it is that you have that you want to do. All right, ramps have their own specifications, and the thing to know about a ramp is, if you're planning to put it in, I would say if you can get it into the garage, that's a lot better than putting it outside. Ramps are very long for the amount of rise that you get. For every 1 inch, if you want it to be according to ADA, you have to go 12 inches out to get 1 inch of rise. So if you've got a 7-inch step, just one, that means you've got 7 feet of ramp. So it's quite a bit. So you have people snaking them around, and they need bumpers, they need rails. So, ramps are a lot of work. And rails, if you have an entrance way that you're trying to get up, if it even has one step, you should have some kind of a handhold. Often in a garage, that's hard to do because there might not be a wall to connect it to. And so they have these really cool things. They didn't used to have a lot of this equipment either. So we're lucky right now. We have a lot of equipment, things that can solve problems. But one of my favorites is it's a fold down grab bar. So this is the wall and the door is here. And I want a railing out here, but I have nothing to connect it to. So I can connect it to this wall and it folds down and it's a U shape. So it extends out like a railing would, only there's no wall. Um, and they make them in all different lengths. And then when you don't, if you don't want it, you can fold it up and then rotate it flat and it's out of the way. Those are especially nice for stairwells where you don't know what to do. You want to block the stairwell so somebody coming by doesn't inadvertently, fall down the stairs. So you want to put some kind of a barrier there. A lot of times I've seen people put baby gates up, but it's totally ineffective. They're not going to hold anybody and they're way too low. You just fall right over the top of them. So anyway, I have a horror story about that one, but well, it was a horror story that could have been. We had to work on that one. Yeah, so I think that's about all I want to say. Let's go to the bathroom. I spend a lot of time in the bathrooms. Yes. No, because there were just so many. I actually thought about bringing lots of pictures, but there would have been so many. I don't even know where I would start. All this is online. I mean, there are lots of things you can find online, and if you want to talk about that more, just give me a call and we'll do some brainstorming. But anyway, bathrooms. They are the number one place where people are most likely to fall. Why? Water. Water and being in a hurry and yeah, all the things, all the things. I want to tell you two things to avoid. Make sure I get that in first. I am totally not a fan of these new step-in showers. I'm sorry, step-in tubs where you step in, you sit down, you close the door, it's got gaskets on it, and you fill it up, and there you are sitting, and the water fills up around you, and it's lovely, is truly lovely to just be able to sit in there, and you don't have to get down and up from the tub. However, for Parkinson's, they can be an absolute nightmare because it's a big step in to get into it. It's a very narrow little opening and the door opens into the tub. You have to kind of squeeze by that and then sit down and then get your feet back so you can get that door closed. And then once you're in, it fills up. And anybody who needs help, like say maybe I can't reach my feet and somebody usually helps me with my feet or parts of my bathing, that person is going to have to lean over this wall, this door, and they're not going to be able to reach anything. The other thing that happens that the only one, I've had two people who have had these and both had Parkinson's, and the first person was so excited to show it to me. Got him in there. I thought, oh, okay, I'm not a fan of this already, but all right, he loves it. And so he gets in, is just luxuriating in it, and he gets so tired. And I have no way to get him out. I had to literally climb up on the back of it and get down into it around to lift him up and then get the door open and somehow get him out. It was a nightmare. But I've seen another one that was just as bad. Don't get him. There are other options actually now that didn't even exist. So I thought, well, it's kind of a cool option, but I don't know. Once I saw it actually in action, I thought, no way. The other thing to avoid are those suction grab bars. And they're probably the only thing that people feel is an option, say if you have a glass door enclosure in your shower. But even though they say they're great and, they can hold so much, they are not foolproof. And so you can be depending on them and they're not always going to be there. People who do have them and insist on having them, I just say, you've got to check it every single time. And I can't guarantee that if you check it at the beginning, it's going to be that good at the end of the shower. I just don't recommend them. But grab bars, I absolutely recommend for everybody. I don't even know why they make towel bars anymore. I think everything should be a grab bar. There's just no reason to not have a steady surface to hold onto, a railing. In the bathroom, many of you know I had my parents living with me for about 8 years and made a lot of adaptations to a basement apartment that I made for them. And one of the first things I did was just to wall in the entire thing in grab bars. And it was so helpful. Just leads you right where you want to go. Grab bars, again, I would say get some help to know where to put them so you don't waste a good grab bar. Example of that would be Golden West, at the older building at Golden West. All these apartments, hundreds of apartments. And somebody said, oh, we have to have grab bars. So they got these beautiful, they were at least 4 feet long grab bars, put them in every one of the tub showers, every one of them. But what did they do? They put them like this right in the middle. And I'm like, why? They served absolutely no function. Whereas that grab bar could have helped them the whole way of getting into that tub. It was a total waste. I've seen walk-in showers, roll-in showers. You have a great one, Sandy. I love yours. Yeah, I really like yours. They do have total roll-in showers, just has a little bit of a lip, but one little lip is usually not a big deal. If you ever really needed to roll into it with, say, a rolling shower chair or something. But anyway, there's so many different possibilities. But let's stick to the basics. You want grab bars. Everybody should have grab bars. Let's just establish that. You want non-slip surfaces. So inside the tub and outside. And there are lots of variations on that. Again, Sandy told me about my favorite rug. If you're going to need something outside of a tub or say in the kitchen right next to the sink, it's a low profile, non-slip, holds tons of water. If you dropped a whole gallon of water on it, it would hold it and not leak through. It's called Water Hog and it's by LL Bean. A little pricey for a throw rug, but it's not really a throw rug, but for a mat, it's great. And then in the showers, they have these suction shower mats. Some are much better than others. Some just, the water hits them and they just start to float. It's like a little floaty toy. Yeah. So you got to take them back. If they don't work, just take them back. It's not worth it. And then where do you sit? Why do you sit? You sit because there's water in there and you're going to have water on your head and you're going to have soap and you're going to close your eyes at different times. So we all know that balance is an issue. So add to that closing your eyes. And if you've ever tried balance exercises in class, where we've had you close your eyes and all of a sudden, you're doing pretty well. And then I say, okay, close your eyes. And everybody starts to go like this. That's because we use our eyes for our balance. And a shower is one place where that can be suddenly a factor. So some place to sit is really helpful. A lot of the places, like I'm sure here and other places, they have built-in benches, which are lovely. They're not always right where you want them to be. Sometimes they're way too far away from the actual water. So you kind of have to look at that. And some of the fold down benches are an option to get them out of the way for one person, back in for another. they can work and sometimes they don't. But again, it's all stuff that you have to just sort of look at and make a decision. Roll-in showers. Oh my gosh, there was a beautiful facility that had all these roll-in showers. And but they didn't have a way to keep the water off of this little ramp that led into it. And so it was like a sliding board. I'm like, this is more dangerous than if you just had a tub to step over. Handheld showers are super handy to have. They help the person to just sit down in a dry shower and then turn it on away from themselves, get the water warmed up, and then they go ahead and shower. And you can do all kinds of things without even getting out of your chair. So it's really nice. You can use different kinds of benches. You can have little benches that just sit inside the tub. You can have a transfer bench that sits outside of the tub on one end and all the way to the inside of the tub on the other. So you sit down and then you pivot into the tub and slide across. Those are really handy for tubs that you think, oh, this tub will never work. Yeah, it might. It probably will. And then roll-in shower chairs, or a lot of people will use a bedside commode because it's got armrests for people who are a little unsteady with their balance or posture. It also has a cutout, so you don't even really have to stand up to wash your bottom. And then where do you put your towels? Where do you hang stuff? Are you putting, is your sink in one place, but your towel over here? So you have to turn. We already know that turns are an invitation for freezing. So keep things in a place so that you eliminate as many maneuvers as possible. And then there's simple, really simple things like just those shower hooks that have ball bearings on them and they just roll. You just give them a little push and they go all the way across the shower, as opposed to those plastic cheap ones that and they get stuck on everything. And again, all those little things can make a difference. The toilets, a lot of people like to raise their toilet seats up because they don't want to buy a new toilet. The ADA recommendation is 19 inches. That's it's probably pretty close to a chair height. And you can get different risers for the chair. Just make sure your riser fits your toilet. There are round toilets and elongated toilets. And if you've got an elongated toilet and you try to put a round one on, it's going to shift. And that's going to throw you off and you're not going to feel very steady. So they have toilet rails that you can put on separate. You can put a bedside commode frame over. There's all kinds of things, and they're making new stuff all the time. You can even get a rolling commode that somebody can be rolled right over the toilet, use the toilet, back them out, take them right in, roll them into the shower. It's like magic. Anyway, but the other thing, the one thing that people say pretty consistently when they're trying to kind of look down the road, and this is not just Parkinson's, it's everybody. It's like, what is it that you really don't want somebody to ever have to help you with? Having to wipe off after the toilet. That's a really common one. And a friend of mine with Parkinson's was just raving about his new bidet and the freedom that gave him. So, and he said he got one at Home Depot. It wasn't that pricey and it worked great. But I would also recommend just simple things like also think about how easy the clothes are that you're wearing. You know, if you have to unbuckle and then unzip and then it's too tight and you're having to get stuff down. Well, when you go to the bathroom, the closer you get, this is for most people, the closer you get to that toilet, the stronger the urge to pee is. We call it, my friend and I call it pee brain. And you just, it gets really strong. So wouldn't it be better to have clothes that go down and up really fast and practice that? We actually practice that in class, but people don't know it's because of that. Pretty much stretchy pants is it. And then the other thing is if you need to wear some Depends, especially at night. Just to give you that confidence that, okay, if I just lose it, it's not a disaster. I'm going to be okay. All right. And then the last thing about the bathroom I'll say is have some kind of communication. So a lifeline goes into the shower with you. It can get wet. A phone, I don't know if phones can get wet. I bet some of them can, but you want something that's with you all the time. Okay, let's see. How are we doing? I think we're doing okay. Bedrooms. They're the second highest fall risk. Probably because I'm imagining this that again, you have to use the toilet a lot during the night because every time you wake up, and people with Parkinson's are notoriously plagued with sleep problems. And so then, you know, you wake up and you think, I got to go to the bathroom. You just do. And so you get in this habit. And once you get in the habit of it, it just has a life of its own. But at night, your meds are worn off. All of us are stiff when we get up at night, all of us. And so the risk is pretty high. The meds have worn off, so that adds to the stiffness. And so, yeah, and then you've got REM sleep disorder, that disorder where people act out their dreams and they can get pretty wild and move around a lot, even fall out of bed. And so there's that too. So let's take that one first and then we'll go to the others. REM sleep disorder, you might want to consider at least one thing is pushing the mattress up against one wall. And then of course you got the wall behind. So you've got wall at the head of the bed and wall on the side, and at least, you know, that's some protection, but lower that mattress height. And so if the person does fall out of bed, then it's not going to be as long of a fall. Lower mattress heights in general are not a bad idea. What I find is with a lot of the new mattresses, they're just so high. And I'll demonstrate maybe over here. Try not to knock this off. Let's say this is a bed, but if it's, a lot of them are so high that you try to get on them, but you can't like use your feet to get scooted back. And that's really important if you want to use good body mechanics to lay down. So if you're like this and you try to get into bed, this is what's probably going to happen. And then you're sprawled out diagonally across the bed, and some kind person is going to try to help you get organized, but it's a lot of work to do that. So being able to have your feet flat on the floor is going to give you the leverage, but also the confidence when you do get out of the bed to have your feet flat on the floor. The kinds of bedding can make a big difference. They have products that are like silky sheets. They're made out of satin, I think, or something like satin. And so they provide a little bit of a slipperiness.
I'm gonna go shovel the driveway.
Oh,
Okay. But sometimes you don't want that slippery surface on the edge of the bed. So I've heard of a new product called Comfort Linen. Haven't tried it out, but it's got the satiny part in the middle, and it's got a part that has more friction on the edge of the mattress or of the bed. So I thought, well, that's kind of an interesting idea. I'd like to try that sometime. The other thing I think gets people all tangled up is linens or comforters and blankets and quilts. They just are too heavy. And so you need something you can just sort of toss off and then move your feet and get yourself organized with your positioning. You don't need that extra struggle being tangled up in these heavy linens. The other thing about quilts and comforters is that a lot of people, when they make the bed, the comforter is hanging down on the floor. And so it's down at the corner here, and they go around the corner and catch the foot on it and trip. I've seen that happen. Well, I've seen it. I've tried to prevent that from happening many times. I've heard of it happening. Quite a few. So anyway, And then there's the idea of, okay, if you're going to be using the toilet a lot at night, should you bring the toilet to you? It's a big question. I really struggled with my own mom on this one. She was getting up multiple times at night. Her balance was horrible. And it was just such an ordeal for her to get there. And she was exhausted, just not getting enough sleep. So I said, Mom, please, let's just try a bedside commode. First night after she tried it, I was afraid to go downstairs and ask her how it went because I knew she was going to tell me, just take it away. She's like, that really worked. That I slept so well and it was so easy. So anyway, you never know. Sometimes they work. For men, urinals, they're super easy to use as opposed to trying to get up and go all the way into the bathroom, especially if you have like a stairwell, like the bedroom's over here, you have to go past the stairwell to get to the toilet. It's kind of a tricky situation at night. So urinals work pretty well for men. If you're a little bit concerned about being steady enough, I've set up grab bars across from the bed on the wall, so they've got something to hold on to. You know, it's just everybody's different. So for women, they have a new product, and I'm sure they'll just keep coming out with more stuff. PureWick. I just bought one of these for my aunt who was having incontinence issues, and it's a really cool thing. It's like a piece of foam, and it's external. You just position it between the legs. It's just for women, and it has a tube and it has a container that sits outside the bed, and it just when there's any liquid at all, any urine at all, it just sucks it right out, and it works. They use it in hospitals now and for people who just can't move and or can't get to the toilet. It's called PureWick. They're not cheap, but wow, do they work? Only for females. Sorry, you've had urinals for years. So we're just catching up and we're using our technology. But think about bed pads, you know, things that if you do have an accident, it's not the end of the world. You don't have to get up and change all the sheets. You might be able to just get by with changing the padding if you're lucky, and wearing Depends at night. The other thing I would say about nighttime is it might be a time when even if you don't need a piece of equipment for mobility like a walker, it might not be a bad idea to have one at night because you just, like I said, you're so stiff, all of us, but with Parkinson's, much more so. And the balance issues and all the things that come with it, wouldn't it be better just to have something to give you a little bit of extra help? It could be grab bars, it could be a walker, it could be anything. And then, of course, having access to good lighting. So they have some really cool motion activated lights. You can put them right next to the stairs. You can put them right under your bed so that when your feet hit the ground, the light turns on and they're very bright. Yeah, let's see. Is there anything else I want to tell you? Oh, getting out of the bed on the easiest side. Just because you've always gotten out of it on that side, maybe it would be much better and easier, more direct to access the toilet if you got out on the other side. Could you maybe think about changing that? And then, of course, we talked about clothing. And a lot of people have questions. I'm just racing through this here. Motorized beds. They're pretty nice. And a lot of beds now, you know, you don't even have to get a hospital bed, and it has the different controls to lift you up. I don't really recommend them that much for getting in and out of the bed, although some people use them for that because I think it kind of messes up your body mechanics. I'm looking at this over here and thinking about whether I want to demonstrate. But for other purposes, I think they're really nice because they help you to move around and they can eliminate pain. For somebody who stays in one position for long periods of time. They can also help with pressure relief, which can be a problem if you're in one position for long periods of time. You can get pressure sores, and so that's not good. They have things to keep the bedding off of the foot of the bed that, like little, like a little metal structure that you can put in there, but there's all kinds of things. So again, 50 ways to lose your lover and 25 ways to modify any problem that you have. Let's go to the kitchens. All right, kitchens, when do I usually see problems? It's usually from all the turns and the carrying things. That's where I probably see the most problems. So you want to establish work centers, and they would help you to avoid like having to do a lot of maneuvers and a lot of walking around and turns and all that to get to stuff. You want to try to eliminate as much clutter and confusion on the counters as possible. So if there's any way you can put that stuff away and not have all the knickknacks and the things that you never use, but somebody gave them to you and you just think they're cute, just get rid of them and have your work center clear so you can focus on what you're doing. You're already multitasking, so don't make it harder by adding confusion. You want a proper work height so that you can stand up as tall as you need to and have everything about waist height. It's usually pretty good. And have a seated option. So if you get tired, but you still have a few more things to chop, can you sit down at a bar stool and chop it there or something? Keeping your things that you use a lot in really easy places to access would be good, especially if they're heavier. Because the last thing you want to do is have some big heavy thing up here that you have to get on that step stool. I saw my mom do this. Get on that step stool and grab it down, and then it like pulls you backwards. Sliding versus carrying things is an option and works really well. We talked about the water hog. Oh, one of my pet peeves is not only pets, because that is a pet peeve. You have a dog bowl over here, and you have a dog that's, drinks and doesn't slop it around, but then they go around and all the water is just dripping all over the floor. It becomes a slipping hazard. So do ice makers. I don't like ice makers, but maybe you've got one that doesn't spray the ice all over the place. If it does, those little chips of ice melt and now you've got a slipping hazard. But there's so many other hacks and little tricks you can try in the kitchen that it would be like a whole conversation. I'm not going to go into all those. Can we talk about doors next? Why not? 32 inches is the ADA requirement. And of course, whose bathroom door that was built 20 years ago or more has that? Probably most don't. So you can modify, you can widen doors. That's an option. You can use offsetting hinges. They sell them at McGuckins. For about, I bet about $75 you could modify a door. What happens is, okay, so you've got, this is one side of your door. Here's your door. We'll do it like this. The door closes and opens, but it's inside the door frame. So you've got this amount of space where the door is that's taken up by the door. Okay. With an offsetting hinge, it moves that door to the outside of the door frame instead of on the inside. It just works. Let me just say that. Hard to explain, but it really does help if you need to get something through. And of course, they have lots of pieces of equipment now that you might be trying to get through that door that didn't used to be so flexible. Now they have contracting walkers that you can kind of squeeze in like an accordion and then pull back out. Those are really handy. They also have transport wheelchairs that are much narrower than the wheelchairs that we all used to use. I've taken the rims off of wheelchairs before just to give myself an extra couple inches so I could fit something through a doorway. There's lots of options. Lever handles, you know, the kind you just, oh, like that one over there on that door, that would be a lever handle where you just push it down. Reversing the door opening. I had a woman fairly recently who had, she had a lot of freezing of gait. So she was at a high fall risk, and she had this little bedroom and a bathroom suite in her daughter's house. And she just basically needed to get up from the bed and walk into the bathroom. The problem was when she got in there, she had, the toilet was right here, and she had to get the door closed because it opens in, most doors open into the bathroom. She had to get the door closed and then sit down on the toilet. And all those maneuvers were causing her feet to freeze. And I said to her daughter, you know, I would take that door off if I were you. And the person who lived there said, oh, no, 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 I don't want to do that. I want my privacy. I said, well, okay, we could put a curtain up. No, that's not enough. We can make the door open to the outside instead of to the inside. So we had some different options, but what I told the daughter was, you know, she's very likely to fall in there. And if she does, you're not going to be able to get to her because the door, she's going to be on the floor and you're going to be opening the door right into her. So you kind of have to think about what would be the worst thing. That would be pretty bad if you couldn't get to them. So anyway, in the showers, we haven't really talked about this, but a lot of tub showers and even walk-ins have the doors. On a walk-in, it's not too bad. They're usually a little bit bigger, but not always. The doors can, if you have a swing door in a shower, it can open in or out. That's kind of cool. Can be very handy because you certainly don't want a door that's going to block a grab bar that's inside or outside for that matter. But with sliding doors, a lot of times in tubs, it can limit your options for like stepping into the tub. It really restricts the amount of movement you have and whether you can use a transfer bench, the ones that come outside and inside the tub. So that's something to kind of think about. It might be better to just take the door off and replace it with a curtain. Be a lot easier for somebody trying to help the person as well. Let's see. In doorways, like we said earlier, they can cause freezing of gait. So sometimes a really simple solution for that freezing that happens if it's always at the same doorway, maybe going into the bedroom from the hallway, sometimes just a few pieces of tape on the floor and just say, okay, I want you to step over each of these pieces of tape and it gets the focus on the feet again, because it's really easy to just think, okay, I'm going in there, and you get the closer you get to the door, the more the feet start to freeze. But it's amazing if you put a few pieces of tape there, that same person will just go right over them because the focus is on the feet all of a sudden. So, well, I won't tell you that unless we have time. I'll tell you another story. We talked about the doors on the outside that have too much pressure, they go too fast. So you might want to look at those hinges and see if they're closing the door too fast or too hard. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's it for that. Let's talk about floors. Okay, so hard surfaces, they're great for rolling things on. So if you have walkers or wheelchairs or anything like that, they're great. They don't have a lot of obstacles unless you put the obstacles in the way, which I don't recommend. But if you do fall, they're a harder surface. So there's that. The soft surfaces are obviously going to be a little bit easier if you do fall. However, they're harder if you have a wheeled object that, you know, like a walker or a wheelchair. One of the problems is when you have multiple surfaces, and most houses do, where you have to change from a hard surface to a carpeted surface, or you've got rugs on top of a hard surface or whatever, changes. So you want to really think about those because those transitions can often cause freezing of gait. It's like, okay, I got to make a decision. And again, if you use that periscope analysis where you're looking down and all of a sudden you come upon it and it you haven't anticipated it well, that can be a problem. Clearing the pathway is so important. Some people use clutter and furniture to okay, I'm going to tell you this story about this guy because it was so interesting. He fell many times a day, and his whole way of getting around was basically to lean and then fall into something, and then he'd find the next object and he would lean and then fall. So he didn't fall to the ground all the time. He did fall a lot, but he didn't always fall to the ground. He would use that as his way to get around as opposed to thinking about his feet. So he had this really two situations. One was stairs. And I was just like horrified to ask him, okay, how do you get to your laundry that's down the steps in the basement with that concrete floor at the bottom? And as an OT, you just have to put your hands in your pocket and tape over your mouth and just say, show me. And so I did. I said, could you show me? And he bolted down the stairs, just dun, 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 ran down them. And I was like, what? When he got down there, well, I'll tell you what his office was like too, because it was kind of similar. He had papers all over the floor. And I said, well, how do you get from the doorway into your office chair? And he said, oh, well, I just do this. And he just went from a blank space to a blank space, avoiding the papers. And I'm like, well, okay, now we know what's going on here. This man needs targets. He really needs targets. So I said, go do something for a while. And I got out my tape and I taped marks all the way around his house. And so when I said, okay, we're going to try this all again, just getting through the house where he was doing the falling into the furniture and the walls and everything. And he walked right through the whole thing. Not one time did he fall. So it's one of those crazy things that you just have to look at the person, see what it is that helps them to move well and use it. And it's no guarantee that it's going to last forever because they might kind of get used to it and stop thinking about it, stop focusing on it. But at least for a while, that really did seem to help. Okay. Tripping hazards, stuff in the way. Transition pieces we talked about. Pets. Okay, here's another story. I think I've got time. I had this woman, she didn't have Parkinson's, but this is a long time ago, little tiny woman, and she would sit in her chair, in a little easy chair, and she had the biggest Cocker Spaniel I had ever seen. It was so fat. And so she had a little table here, and her Meals on Wheels would get delivered, and she would sit in her chair and take her Meals on Wheels and drop it down to the dog that was right at her feet and getting bigger by the day. And so she had to get up. She had a walker. Her walker was on the other side of the dog. So here's this little lady who's, I can't even remember what she had wrong with her, but it was some injury. And she would get up, this little tiny thing, and she'd have to step over the dog to get to her walker, which she needed to then roll away. So you get the idea. Dogs are not a good idea. Now that dog was so enormous that he didn't move very much, but he could have. Just think about if she was in the middle of doing that and the doorbell rings. she would be on the floor. And I did actually have a real good friend who had an injury like that, and it was just a devastating injury. She got up from the table and didn't realize that the friend's dog was right there, and she tried to quickly step over it and ended up having a horrible fracture. So anyway, don't ever step over something that is capable of moving. Likewise, boards in the pathway. I've done that one before. I did that one in a store, the old Gart Brothers. I was running through because I was so excited to tell my daughter something that I just found out, and there was a cord stretched across the pathway that they hadn't covered with one of those transition pieces, and flat, just fell flat. So anyway, that is floors. Lighting, I'm going to go through quickly. We know you need good lighting. So those motion activated lights, they have such good lights now that are really bright and really great for work areas. I would recommend going through and changing those light bulbs. And if you need any, I probably have them. I've got so many light bulbs that I bought at Costco when they were all on sale. But the thing that you want to avoid are glares and shadows, because those can cause you to miss something. And we know when you miss it, you can fall down more easily. Anything that makes it easier to turn on your lamps, so motion activated, automatic. You can have touch lamps, toggle switches where you just tap, it's like a teeter-totter switch. You just tap it and it goes on, and tap the bottom and it turns off. They're easier than the little flip switches. It just take a little bit more apprehension. Yeah, that's all I want to say about that. Living rooms. Okay, biggest problem in the living room is probably going to be where you're sitting and how you get there, and then how you get out of it once you're in it. So, I mean, you might have other things too. Also, the maneuvers that it takes to get to something. So if you always have to like sidestep to sidestep to get around something. Say I've got a chair. This is true in my house. I had to move things around, but I had to get to a window where I would open the blinds depending on the sun during the day. And there was a chair there, and I ended up moving the chair because I just got so annoyed not being able to just walk up to it and do it. What I had to do was I'd go up, and then I'd have to turn and go around and kind of slip behind this to get to what I wanted, and then get out of there. It's just too many maneuvers. So the more you can just make something a straight shot. So if you want to go to, that's a couch now. It used to be a bed. So if you want to go to your couch and sit down, but you have a little coffee table here in the way, and you're using a walker or something, or you have to suddenly stop and turn and do this. Sidestepping usually isn't the hardest move, but it's the turning and having to maneuver that is. So the more you can make it just a straight shot, and again, a couple pieces of tape on the floor in front of a chair can really help. So if I want somebody to go and sit in the chair, I often will say, I'll put two pieces of tape on the floor here and here, and then I'll say, go stand on the tape, or go stand in front of the chair. And what I want them to focus on is where they're putting their feet before they even think about, oh, and you want me to sit? Okay, then they sit. But to try to do both at the same time, often what you'll get is what I call, and my people in my class know this, it's an airplane landing. It's where the closer you get to the target, the more it goes like this, and you slide into it. Same happens on the toilets. You're in a hurry. You want to get there quickly. So you tend to not really think about, where am I going to put my feet? Now I'm going to try to sit down. So it's breaking it down into parts. Lift recliners. I know a lot of people have questions about those. I love lift recliners. I think they're great. And you can get them that lower you all the way down into a totally reclined position. And then to get up, it just lifts you right up and out you go. So I've had different situations where I've felt like that was really helpful for people. Sometimes they have heaters in them too. Mine does, and it's really cool. It's very nice. Okay, and then getting out of low couches. They do make risers. They sell them at McGuckin's and other places, and you can put risers underneath a big chair or a couch. However, there is a real danger of going backwards if you do that. So if you're going to use a riser, I would say only if you've got a wall behind it to keep it from going backwards, because they can, especially when you think about the tendency for Parkinson's is to bend a little bit and you think, okay, that's enough. I'm just going to sit down, and they lean back, and then it's just a hard landing that is all tilted backwards. And so you can actually fall right backwards in a chair doing that, or even a couch. I've seen a couch do it too. So yeah, those risers are really helpful with caution. Area rugs, we talked about that. Yeah. And then the last one is the office that I wanted to mention. And same kind of thing, sort of, with the chair. The office chair, the main problem is usually that it's rolling. And people like their rolling chairs. You can get cast guards or caster guards. Cast guard is for, you've probably got a cast guard. That's to protect your cast in the shower. A caster guard is something that fits on those little casters, those little rolling casters, to not allow them to roll. You can also, on some chairs, just take the casters off. But what I would recommend, if for those people who absolutely refuse to give up their casters, then you just must push that chair up against something firm, preferably in a corner. But if there's at least one surface that's at least helpful, and that way, at least you blocked it from going backwards by pushing it up against something. But again, you'd be safer without that. And in fact, another option would be, I've had people do this before, get yourself a transport wheelchair, the wheelchair that has the little wheels, and you can lock that down too. And then you can roll it into place where you want to roll it, and then lock it when you want to get up or sit down. You got to have prospective memory to remember to lock it though. So anyway, all those little things. And the other thing is, don't toss the papers on the floor. I do that. Oh, I do have one other thing. It's stairs, but I think we've covered a lot of it. Except I did want to mention your new thing. Sandy has a new thing. I'm always looking at ideas at Sandy's house. Treads. She has these wood steps, and her dog goes up and down the stairs, and she doesn't want the dog to freak out and slip on the steps. So she found these really nice little clear plastic treads that stick on. Yeah, really nice solution. Okay, you want good lighting? We talked about that. Don't have those steps with the shadows. Railings. You want railings on both sides. You probably have one strong side and one that's more affected side. So maybe going down, this is my strong side, but when I turn around to go up, oh, it's over here. I need one over here too. And I need to remember to use the railing. Okay, blocking the stairs. I talked about that already. It's a real, the story I was going to tell you, I'll tell you super quick. It was a woman who had a power wheelchair. she did have Parkinson's, and she had to drive her power wheelchair around an open stairway and down a hallway. And I was just completely flipped out because she did not have good control of the wheelchair. And the thought of her making a bad turn, even just a small one with a powerful, heavy thing like a power wheelchair and falling down the steps, I just couldn't even do it. Couldn't do it. That one was a big one. And then the other thing that you can easily do is stop carrying stuff on the steps. Just don't do it. You can put stuff in a pack. You can throw a bag of laundry down the stairs if you want. You can do a lot of things. You can also get a stair glide. I have one. They work great. And if you have a flat or a straight stairwell, they're not as expensive as I expected them to be. Now, if you have one that has a platform and a turn or a curved stair, they can accommodate you, but you pay for all those changes in them. Okay, so lots of other modifications and adaptations and strategies and equipment and all that stuff. It's going to be so individual that I really can't go into it in too much more detail. But that's what occupational therapists typically do, is we try to help you figure out what you're going to do in your setting. Is it going to work for you? Is there, like, that was kind of an insurmountable one right there with that power wheelchair, and they were going to have to make a major change there. There wasn't anything I could do to help that. But a lot of times there are some easy fixes or some not so terrible fixes. And sometimes you just think, no, I just want my life to be easier. I want to go someplace where I don't have to worry about doing all this stuff. So, and that's great too. So, questions? Yes.
Nancy, that was great. And my husband, fantastic, fantastic. I was taking notes, and it made me recall so many things that I had to deal with my husband when he was alive. The first thing is, be careful about what you choose to reach for when you're trying to get up. I've seen glass shelves go over. I've seen coffee tables go over. My husband once reached for a whole shelf of glasses that went down. So it doubled the problem we had with him trying to get up. The other thing is, you talk about the chair being pushed backwards when they try to sit down or stand up. I use door stoppers.
Nice.
On the back legs of the couches and the chairs, so they did not move, because he used to dig everything into the walls, or the sofa used to just keep on moving down behind it. So door stoppers, the cheap rubber ones, just lift up the back of the leg, stick it under there, and it's not going anywhere. The other thing is, we eliminated top sheets totally. We had to. You got so caught up in it. You didn't mention bed rails.
Oh, you know what? When you were saying that, I didn't mention bed rails, and you can even get them for a couch as well. But bed rails are really nice so long as you know the precautions, because people can, especially if they're very confused, they can get kind of tangled up in them. And some assisted living facilities will not even allow them. Hospice will not allow them either, because there is a risk with that. But they are so helpful.
The other thing is, what we did, he found a way to get his feet caught in the bed rails. So, because he didn't sleep, he ended up sleeping horizontally and I had a bed rail between the two beds. We had two twins stuck together. And I put a bed rail between us because, I ended up with his feet on top of my head or on my chest. You all know what I'm talking about. But then he ended up getting his feet caught in the bed rails. We all plan, and then we find out the problems. So my daughter-in-law, I said, could you make a pillowcase for this bed rail that
Mm.
we can put on so he cannot get his feet through those rails. That was another thing we discovered.
They have some
Progressive-
that are made too.
Oh, do they?
They have covers that are made and they actually have little pockets in it so you can put your phone in them and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So they,
I think progressive glasses cause a lot of falls also.
good one.
Okay, I have more. Oh, we used to line up urinals by the side of the bed. 4 urinals were lined up by the side of the bed. So he couldn't really cover the urinals. That was got too complicated after a while. He just would go down the line on you know, what's that? Believe me, when you put the
Neil
cap
said he
on,
couldn't miss for those of you online.
wait, when you put the cap on before you urinate in it, you miss. I can give you lots of stories.
That's a miss.
All
That's
right,
a
I
miss
have
for
another
sure.
one. One of the okay, we did have a grab bar for the shower on the glass, and I bought it from a store that sells ship equipment.
Hmm.
So they
Interesting.
have handrails on the outside of the ships. And this had a huge, huge stopper. And you had to really twist it and turn it for it to give the suction. And it was amazing. We had a lot of trouble getting it off after he passed away. Okay. Walking downstairs. This worked for us, I have to say, 100% of the time. I'm going to demonstrate. Because of the short steps, I mean, the short extension of your feet, my husband always ended up getting his heel caught on the step that he was leaving, and then he'd get it, taking another step, he would get it caught again and tumble forward. What I taught him, and I just observe a lot, is to kick. So when he went downstairs, from now on, I would say, kick, 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 kick. And he never tripped on the stairs again. After we saying it repeatedly and repeatedly, he used to say it to himself, kick, 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 kick. And it worked.
Likewise, you can do that on the way up because the problem on the way up the stairs requires another strategy. Usually people will put their whole foot on the first step because they're thinking about it.
And then
Half of their foot on the next step and then just maybe their toes. And if you have any kind of a nose, this is called the nose, that sticks out or something, you can catch your foot on it if you don't get up high enough. But anyway, the problem, and so what we taught him was kick forward, kick the front of the step, kick the front of the step. Make sure you're actually on the step. Feel it and hear it.
because the stairs are the biggest fear. People say, should I move? My first question is, where is the master bedroom?
Where's the
Master bedroom. And it's always, oh, it's upstairs. So we moved from our mountain house because it was constant and it was really bad. So, and finding a one level home, a condo or something in Boulder is very difficult. So, yes,
Oh, yeah. Okay. Those of you
I
online, there's
totally
one for
recommend
sale.
Sharon's place. It's
Yes,
perfect. It's
it
really
is.
perfect.
It's a great place.
Location. Okay. But you say that every Parkinson's patient is unique, but really, I think they're about 75% the same.
There's a
because
lot of similarities.
all of these problems are all of ours.
Thank you very much. One thing I didn't mention was my list of resources that I wanted to let you know about because there are people who can come in and help. There are loan closets, there are respite services, there are people who volunteer to put in grab bars and do light handyman work. There are people who do snow removal and yard like clearing out your leaves. There's Accessoride, there's shop at home groceries, there's medical supply stores. Yeah, 23rd. It's the third Tuesday in April that we'll be talking about that. But I did want to say, Gail's talk right now should remind you that getting involved with support groups is a marvelous way to get good ideas. You don't need an OT to tell you what Gail just told you. She told you from personal experience what was working for her and has come up with marvelous solutions. So, yeah. Cheryl, did you? Yeah, you have the mic.
So at our dining table, we have chairs that have a rounded back and a cushion, but no handles. And it's on carpet. And Bill struggles with that whole thing, but I don't know what to do. Oh, I'm sorry. So it's a round back and a cushion seat. And when he goes to that seat,
Yeah.
the whole thing.
So the kind of chair is what you're going to be looking at. And there are so many that I'm not even sure where to start with that other than to just try, let's try some chairs and see what works and what works with the table too. A lot of times where you sit at the table can make a difference. If you sit, kind of on one side or the other, instead of at the end where you can, and again, a rolling chair like a transport wheelchair is really a cool thing for a lot of reasons because you can roll it right up to the end of the table and lock it down. When you want to get up, just roll it back, turn it, lock it down, and you eliminate a lot of those maneuvers that you see. We used to practice this with some of my folks that were in assisted living facilities, and they'd have to go to these crowded dining rooms and try to maneuver in a very crowded situation, figure out how to get the chair back, and then how to get their feet into, and then how to scoot the chair under them. And you just eliminated pretty much all of those steps with a chair that's on rollers that you can lock down.
A person that refinishes furniture and tell them what your problem is. He might be able to create something for his chair and give you add some sort of an arm to his chair.
Arms are good, right? Okay. Okay.
Very helpful. And some people with Parkinson's and others too will get in. My mom was one of these. She didn't have Parkinson's, but she had a lot of scoliosis and would bend over, and she just needed armrests. She needed the support. But people with Parkinson's need it for a different reason, and also to get up. Now in class, we don't use them because I want people to learn the right body mechanics. But at home, that's a different story. You want things easy at home, not hard. Everything should be.
One more thing, if you can't adapt that chair in some way, they can put a beautiful wood arm on it and not the upholstered part. You can find, if you have at the head of the table and the end of the table, you can eliminate those two chairs and get something that's compatible in color to whatever you have there now and get new heads of the chairs that would be easier for him to get in and out. Yeah, they cost a little bit, but I wonder if a person that does furniture refinishing, can come up with something that might not be the most aesthetically beautiful, but it might work.
But you're saying also that rolling up is good. To be able to roll, so arms and being able to roll up to the table if you can lock it. Okay.
Yeah. Rolling is great for mobility, not so great for transfers. So you want stable for transfers. You don't want anything moving when you're trying to get up from a surface. But when you're trying to get to a place and it's really complicated to do all the maneuvers, that's when the freezing will happen, and that's when a fall is likely to happen, which may or may not have already happened. And yeah, so yeah, that's where you're working with both issues at the same time. Yeah.
Just to reinforce the transporter, when Rich had to have, when he had the stress fracture, we
Mhm.
borrowed a transporter from one of the rec centers
Mhm.
and used it for a couple months. And it was great at the dining room table because, and we have carpet. So the other chairs are very hard for him to slide, but he was able to move that up. We always
Yeah.
forgot to lock it, but we were on carpet, so we we weren't sliding. But I would, yeah, that was great.
And they have desk arms too. So a desk arm is, all right, desk arms are where you cut out this part, you lower it down so that you can pull right up to a table without, you can get closer in. And those are really handy to use in offices. I've had people swap out office chairs for these with the desk arms. A lot of times you can remove the arms on them, but if you want the arms, they're really handy. Yeah, let's see. Jerry, oh, you got a mic.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the furniture issue and having furniture in our house that is stable, is comfortable for the body, is lightweight to lift up when you need to move it. And the chair that we use in our dining room is called an Eames chair. An Eames chair is made
I
by
know.
Miller. It was designed in the 50s and 60s. The designers were really into body mechanics and public spaces. You'll see these chairs in many of the public spaces around this city and other cities. It is the most fabulous chair. It does not have an arm, or you can get them. I think maybe you can get them in arms. Doesn't have wheels, but it has a little disc on the bottom that makes it easy to slide and makes it more stable if it's on a thin carpet. They are the best chairs. We bought them 10 years ago. We still say to ourselves, I cannot believe that we have these chairs. And you can get them in really bright, cheerful colors, which is really awesome for some of us who have mood issues. So thank you so much for bringing up that issue. But I wanted to also comment particularly what Gail shared and particularly what Nancy shared about being observant. We all have all these different personal characteristics. And I think what Nancy shared with us today is about being really observant about your body, being really observant about the space that you're always in, but also being observant about the spaces that you move through. And there's just so many ways that you can pay attention to that and then critique whether or not it's the best way or not. And I would also be careful about not putting too much of this stuff around because then it turns into the clutter that you talked about earlier.
That's right.
So anyway.
I saw one house one time. And I've seen so many houses. And this person must have been one of those people who goes, it was before online stuff, but those made for TV products. She had everyone you could possibly imagine. And it was such a cluttered mess. Anyway, you see everything, see everything. I think we're gonna have to close this. It's time. And like Gail said, please join us in April for more talk about resources. And in the meantime, know that you have got incredible resources right here in this support group family of people. We have people who have been through it and seen it all and have fabulous ideas. So use us and let us know what some of your questions are so we can try to answer those in our talks. Yeah, one more question? It's the third Tuesday. Does everybody have a 23rd, 10 a.m. here?
It may come up in the April meeting, but I used to volunteer for Cultivate, And they will install railings, ramps, grab bars, mostly safety things.
Mhm.
In addition to yard work and snow removal and grocery delivery. So they're a great organization and it's all free and they won't take tips or I mean, nothing is expected. It's just volunteer.
It's a fabulous service. They'll even put in light bulbs for you, so you don't have to get up on that
Yeah.
ladder to
Smoke
do stuff.
detectors, I
Yep,
think.
they'll do
yeah.
all that, change the batteries on your smoke detectors, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and if you are putting in grab bars, like I said, don't do what Golden West did. Please ask for a quick look. We could figure it out for you and it would save you a lot. Yes, Neil.
I don't know if it's a question or a comment.
Mhm.
When you were speaking about the new tubs that are made, these walk-in tubs,
Oh, yeah.
and getting in there and lifting somebody out of it, how would it be different than any other tub?
Oh, well, these are the ones where you walk in, you close the door after
Right.
you sit down on a built-in seat, and then it fills up with water up to like your chest. So it's like you're sitting in the tub. And then you have to, let the water out. So it
Right.
does, they're quicker to get out now, the water to drain out than they used to be, because that used to be, person would be freezing, waiting for the water to drain out. But they fixed that problem. But the other problem is still there, that the door opens in to where their feet are.
Right.
And it's not very big to start with. And they already had to go over a lip that's about that high. The door is just a little tiny thing that goes that way. So then they get in there and they got to get their self turned around to get the door closed and latch it. And then they turn the water on. So again, you can do the handheld shower and it'll keep you warm. So that's good. But everything else about it, I hate. If I'm trying to help them, I can't do that. I can't get to them over the side of that tub. And if they get into any kind of a predicament, it's hard.
How do you make a normal, regular tub safe?
Oh, well, yeah,
Soak
you
in it.
can, yeah. It depends on the person, and it depends on how it's arranged, what's around it to block your entrance to it. But a lot of times you can have, okay, so you got a bathtub here, and here's your little shower chair. To get to it, you have to step up and over that. So some people will put a grab bar somewhere in here. But if that becomes too much, and it often is, you can get something that's like a park bench. And it has two legs on the outside of that tub wall. It doesn't have this, and it's just a park bench. And so you sit down on the outside, you get your feet in, and then you slide in. And it works very well. And we've used all kinds of things to make that slide easier. I've even used those little flexible cutting mats because they just zoom a person right in. They're really good, but you got to be careful with them. Anyway, so that's one way. It is possible to cut out a tub. They can do that. It's a lot cheaper than getting a whole new one, but sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. I think it's better just to go ahead and adapt it. You can even get ones where you roll across. You don't even have to slide. You just roll the person across. There's so many different options now that I don't even know about. I go online and I'm like, when did they make this? Where was this when I was doing home care? Man, it would have made it easier. But to have the grab bars in the right place and have the kind of tub bench that works for the type of mobility that that person has, that's what you're really looking for. And without seeing the specific one, it's kind of hard to say. I can only give you sort of generals. Yeah, actually there are. And those I have not, oh, well, I have seen one. I had a guy with ALS and he had one. And they have different ways of, it's like that slide kind of thing into the tub. And then when you get in there, they have ones that will mechanically lower you down and raise you back up. Some of them do it with air. It's like a big pillow and it's filled up when you get on it and they let all the air out and it drops you down gradually. And then it can lift you back up. They have ones that are more mechanical than that are, push button control and it lifts you up like an elevator kind of a lift. Yeah. So they actually do have things like that and they're a lot cheaper than getting a whole new tub. But that tub, if you get that, what happens is you have eliminated every other option because now it's a whole built-in thing and you will not be able to adapt it. So it's a dead end if it doesn't work. Yeah, the walk-in ones that I was talking about. Yeah.
Nancy, thank you for a very informative session. We're new to the Parkinson's family, having been diagnosed a month and a half ago. If in the future we need to get in touch with you to come in and take a look at the house, is that possible? And if so, do you have a business card?
I don't have a business card, but my phone number is everywhere on the exercise part of the newsletter. And join us for some exercise classes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Call anytime and I'm glad to help. All right. Thank you for coming in this bad weather. I appreciate it.